Most people wait for motivation before they begin. They tell themselves they will start when they feel ready, when they feel inspired, when the energy is right. But motivation is unpredictable. It rises and falls like weather. Some days it is strong and exciting, and other days it disappears without explanation. Consistency does not depend on weather. Consistency is quieter than motivation. It does not give you a rush of excitement. It does not make you feel powerful instantly. It simply asks you to return to the same action again and again, even when nothing dramatic is happening. There was a time when he relied completely on motivation. On days he felt inspired, he worked hard, made plans, imagined big results. On days he felt tired or doubtful, everything stopped. Progress became inconsistent because effort became emotional. That cycle created frustration. He began to notice that motivation made him feel productive for short periods, but consistency made him productive over long periods. Motivation helped him start. Consistency helped him continue. The difference between the two is subtle but powerful. Motivation is based on emotion. Consistency is based on decision. When you rely on emotion, your progress depends on how you feel. When you rely on decision, your progress depends on what you have chosen, regardless of mood. He decided to test something simple. Instead of asking himself every morning whether he felt motivated, he asked only one question: what is the smallest version of this task I can complete today? That question removed pressure. It removed drama. It made action manageable. Some days the effort was small. Some days it was strong, but the pattern remained unbroken. And that pattern started building something deeper than excitement. It built trust. Trust in himself. He no longer needed to wait for a surge of inspiration to move. He trusted that even on ordinary days, he would show up. That trust reduced anxiety. It removed the fear of losing progress. It stabilized his energy. Consistency also changed how he viewed results. Instead of expecting quick breakthroughs, he began to appreciate gradual improvement. He understood that progress compounds quietly. One small action repeated daily becomes something significant over time. This is the part most people underestimate. They underestimate the power of steady movement. Consistency is not glamorous. It is not impressive in the moment. It looks almost boring from the outside. But consistency creates identity. When you act consistently, you stop trying to become disciplined. You become someone who is disciplined. Identity is stronger than emotion. When you identify as someone who shows up, you don't negotiate with yourself every day. The negotiation disappears. The internal debate becomes silent. That silence saves energy. Energy that was once spent arguing with yourself becomes energy you can invest into growth. Consistency also protects you from extremes. It prevents burnout from overworking on motivated days. It prevents stagnation on low-energy days. It keeps you in motion without exhausting you. This balanced movement is what creates long-term success. Not intense effort followed by collapse. Not inspiration followed by delay. But steady repetition followed by quiet expansion. Over time, he realized something important. Motivation is a spark. Consistency is a structure. Sparks are useful for starting fires, but structures are what allow buildings to stand. And life is not built on sparks. It is built on structure. The more he embraced consistency, the less he feared unmotivated days. He understood that motivation is a bonus, not a requirement. When it comes, he uses it. When it leaves, he continues anyway. That is the shift. You stop chasing the feeling of wanting to work, and you start respecting the decision to work. Consistency does not promise excitement. It promises progress. And progress, even when slow, creates confidence. Not loud confidence, but quiet assurance. The kind that does not disappear when circumstances change. When you choose consistency over motivation, you stop living in emotional cycles. You begin living in steady growth. And steady growth, over time, becomes undeniable. That is why consistency wins in the long run. Not because it feels better, but because it lasts. And what lasts is what shapes you. Motivation can change your mood for a day. Consistency changes your character over years. Motivation can push you to begin something new. Consistency carries you through the parts that are repetitive, quiet, and unnoticed. Those unnoticed parts are where real growth happens. He started realizing that the days he once called boring were actually the most important. The days where nothing dramatic happened, where progress felt invisible, where effort felt small. Those were the days building the foundation. Foundation work is rarely exciting. No one celebrates it. No one sees it. But everything stands on it. When you choose consistency, you stop living in bursts. You stop relying on emotional highs to feel productive. You accept that some days will feel neutral, and you move anyway. That neutrality becomes powerful, because neutrality is stable. Stable effort creates stable results. Stable results create stable confidence, and stable confidence does not collapse when challenges appear. Over time, he noticed something subtle but life-changing. The things that once required willpower started feeling automatic. The resistance that used to appear every morning grew weaker. Habits settled into rhythm. Action required less internal debate. This is the hidden reward of consistency. It reduces friction. When friction reduces, progress accelerates without extra force. You don't have to push harder. You simply keep moving. He also realized that consistency builds resilience quietly. When you show up repeatedly, even in small ways, you teach yourself that setbacks are temporary. Missing one day does not end the journey. Failing once does not erase progress. You return, and that return strengthens you. Motivation struggles with setbacks because it is emotional. Consistency absorbs setbacks because it is structural. Structure survives stress, and life will always test your structure. There will be days when results don't match effort. There will be times when others move faster. There will be moments when doubt tries to interrupt your routine. In those moments, motivation might not appear to rescue you, but consistency will already be there. It will remind you that progress is not judged by a single day. It is measured by direction over time. Direction matters more than speed. When you are consistent, you stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. You stay focused on your path. That focus protects your energy. It keeps you grounded, and grounded people grow steadily. Eventually, consistency becomes identity. You are no longer someone trying to improve. You are someone who improves daily. That identity simplifies your life. Decisions become easier. Distractions lose power. You do not chase every opportunity because you are committed to your path. Commitment brings clarity. Clarity brings peace. And peace allows you to work without pressure. This is the quiet strength behind every long-term success story. It is rarely dramatic. It rarely looks impressive in the beginning. But over years, it becomes undeniable. The difference between those who stop and those who continue is rarely talent. It is rarely luck. It is almost always consistency. Because talent without consistency fades. Luck without consistency disappears. But effort repeated over time compounds. And compounding is powerful. So when motivation is strong, appreciate it. Use it to push a little further. But when motivation fades, do not panic. Do not interpret it as failure. See it as an opportunity to rely on something stronger. Consistency does not depend on how you feel. It depends on who you decide to be. And once you decide, once you commit quietly and repeatedly, progress becomes inevitable. Not overnight. Not instantly, but steadily. And steady growth is what lasts. It doesn't collapse when excitement fades. It doesn't disappear when life becomes busy. It doesn't depend on perfect conditions. Steady growth survives because it is built slowly, layer by layer, through repetition that no one else notices. Most people underestimate how powerful slow improvement is because it doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't give you instant satisfaction. But over months and years, small daily actions create distance between who you were and who you are becoming. He began to see this clearly. At first, the changes were almost invisible. Slightly better focus. Slightly better discipline. Slightly less overthinking. Nothing impressive. Nothing worth announcing. But those small improvements stacked quietly. One day he looked back and realized something surprising. The version of him from a year ago would struggle with what now felt normal. That is steady growth. It doesn't shock you. It strengthens you. When growth is steady, it becomes sustainable. You are not exhausted by your own ambition. You are not overwhelmed by your own expectations. You are simply building, one action at a time. And sustainability changes everything. Burnout comes from intensity without balance. Quitting comes from pressure without patience. But steady growth removes extremes. It keeps you moving without breaking you. He also learned that steady growth requires acceptance of slow days. There are days when energy is low, days when output is smaller, days when doubt whispers quietly. Steady growth does not reject those days. It works with them. You do what you can. You protect the pattern. You return tomorrow. That return is powerful. Returning is more important than perfection, because perfection creates fear of failure. Returning creates resilience. Over time, resilience becomes natural. You stop seeing obstacles as interruptions. You start seeing them as part of the rhythm. You adjust instead of stopping. You adapt instead of quitting. This adaptability is what makes steady growth durable. Life will change. Circumstances will shift. People will enter and leave. Plans will evolve. If your progress depends on fixed conditions, it will collapse when those conditions change. But if your progress depends on steady habits and identity, it survives change. Identity is the anchor. When you identify as someone who continues, you continue. When you identify as someone who shows up, you show up. The behavior stops feeling forced because it matches who you believe you are. And that belief becomes self-fulfilling. Steady growth also quiets comparison. You stop measuring yourself against sudden success stories. You understand that quick visibility is not the same as long-term stability. You choose depth over speed. Depth takes time, but depth builds strength that surface-level progress cannot match. Eventually, others may notice. They may see the results, the improvement, the stability. They may call it discipline, talent, or determination. But they will not see the quiet days that built it. And that is fine. Because steady growth is not built for applause. It is built for endurance. When you reach that understanding, you stop chasing dramatic change. You respect gradual transformation. You honor the process instead of obsessing over the outcome. And that shift creates peace. Peace allows focus. Focus allows repetition. Repetition allows mastery. Mastery is not a moment. It is the outcome of steady growth sustained over time. So if your progress feels slow, do not be discouraged. If your effort feels unnoticed, do not underestimate it. If motivation feels distant, do not wait for it. Stay steady. Because what grows steadily does not need to restart. It lasts. Because when growth is steady, you are not building on emotion. You are building on structure. And structure does not collapse every time your mood changes. When you grow in bursts, you constantly restart. You gather momentum, then lose it. You feel inspired, then distracted. You build progress, then pause long enough to lose rhythm. Restarting again and again drains energy. It makes growth feel harder than it needs to be. But steady movement removes the need to restart. You don't have to convince yourself to begin every week. You don't need a new plan every month. You don't depend on a new version of yourself every year. You simply continue. Continuing is powerful. It reduces pressure because you are not trying to change everything at once. It reduces fear because you are not risking everything in one intense effort. It reduces doubt because you are proving to yourself daily that you are capable of consistency. He noticed that once he stopped restarting, life felt lighter. There was less drama around progress, less emotional buildup, less guilt when things were not perfect. He wasn't chasing transformation anymore. He was allowing it. Allowing growth feels different from forcing growth. When you force growth, you rush results. When you allow growth, you respect timing. You accept that meaningful change requires repetition, not urgency. This mindset protects you from extremes. You don't overwork on motivated days. You don't disappear on difficult days. You stay within a sustainable range. Sustainability builds confidence quietly, not the loud kind that needs validation, but the calm kind that trusts itself. You begin to trust that even if today feels slow, the pattern remains intact. The pattern is everything. Patterns create momentum. Momentum reduces resistance. Resistance fading makes action easier. Easier action increases consistency, and consistency strengthens the pattern further. This cycle is simple, but powerful. He also realized something important about rest. Steady growth does not mean constant effort. It means intentional effort. Rest becomes part of the rhythm, not a break from it. You recharge without losing direction. That is maturity. You understand that growth is not about intensity. It is about continuity. You no longer feel the need to prove your dedication through exhaustion. You prove it through repetition. Repetition builds mastery. When you repeat small actions long enough, they shape your thinking. Your thinking shapes your decisions. Your decisions shape your results, and your results reinforce your identity. Identity is what keeps you from restarting. If you see yourself as someone who quits and restarts, you will repeat that cycle. If you see yourself as someone who continues, you will continue. The shift is internal before it is external. Over time, steady growth makes challenges less intimidating. You no longer fear setbacks because you trust your pattern. You know that even if something disrupts you temporarily, you will return. That return is automatic now. Automatic return is strength. It means you are no longer fragile. You are adaptable. You bend, but you do not break. You pause, but you do not abandon your path. And that is what separates temporary effort from lasting transformation. Temporary effort depends on emotion. Lasting transformation depends on rhythm. Rhythm keeps you moving even when the music feels quiet. So if you ever feel like progress is slow, remember this: slow progress that continues is more powerful than fast progress that stops. You do not need to restart when you never fully stop. Stay steady, because steady growth builds a life you don't have to rebuild every time things get hard. And that kind of life endures. It endures because it is not dependent on perfect conditions. It does not collapse when motivation fades, when praise disappears, or when progress slows. It stands because it was built carefully, patiently, and without the need for constant validation. When your growth is steady, your life stops feeling fragile. You no longer fear small disruptions. A bad week does not undo months of effort. A mistake does not erase your identity. You recover faster because your foundation is solid. He began to understand that endurance is not about strength in one moment. It is about stability across many moments. Anyone can be strong once. Anyone can push through a short challenge. But endurance belongs to those who can stay consistent through ordinary days. Ordinary days are where life is really lived. Not during breakthroughs, not during celebrations, but during repetition. When you learn to respect repetition, you begin to see it differently. What once felt boring now feels reliable. What once felt slow now feels secure. You stop craving dramatic progress and start valuing quiet continuity. Continuity creates depth. Depth creates resilience. Resilience creates peace. Peace allows you to think clearly, to act intentionally, and to rest without guilt. When you are not constantly starting over, you have space to refine. You improve small details. You become more precise. Your effort becomes cleaner. Over time, this refinement separates you from your past self. You don't feel rushed anymore. You don't feel behind. You don't feel desperate to prove anything. You are simply committed to continuing. Commitment stabilizes identity. Identity stabilizes action. Action stabilizes results. And stabilized results create confidence that does not depend on applause. That is endurance. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not built overnight. It is built by showing up when nothing exciting is happening, and showing up again the next day. He realized that endurance is the quiet advantage most people overlook. While others chase intensity, he chose steadiness. While others restarted, he continued. While others waited for motivation, he relied on rhythm. That rhythm carried him forward even when progress felt invisible. Invisible progress is still progress. Seeds grow underground long before anyone sees them. The strongest trees take years to mature. The most reliable systems are built slowly and tested repeatedly. When your life is built that way, you do not fear time. Time becomes your ally. Because steady effort compounds, small improvements accumulate, clear habits shape stronger outcomes, and one day, what felt slow begins to look substantial. Not because it happened suddenly, but because it never stopped. That is what endures. A life built steadily does not require reinvention every season. It adapts, but it does not collapse. It grows, but it does not rush. It strengthens, but it does not strain. And when challenges arrive, as they always do, you do not panic. You return to the pattern. You return to the rhythm. You continue. And in that continuation, your life remains stable. Endurance is not about surviving once. It is about continuing quietly, consistently, and intentionally for as long as it takes. And when you live that way, you no longer chase quick results. You build something that lasts. And when something lasts, it changes how you see yourself. You no longer measure your progress by how quickly things improve. You measure it by how steadily you remain committed. The focus shifts from speed to direction, from intensity to endurance. A lasting life is not built in moments of excitement. It is built in the spaces between those moments. In the mornings when you choose to continue, in the evenings when you review quietly instead of judging harshly, in the days when nothing feels extraordinary, yet you still move forward. He began to notice that building something lasting required letting go of the need for constant proof. Proof of growth, proof of success, proof of worth. That need had once driven him, but it had also exhausted him. When he stopped demanding evidence every week, his energy stabilized. Stability allowed depth. Depth allowed focus. Focus allowed refinement. Refinement made his efforts more effective without increasing intensity. He was no longer trying to do more. He was trying to do better. Small adjustments replaced dramatic changes. Subtle improvements replaced emotional swings. This is how lasting progress feels. It is not chaotic. It is not rushed. It is measured. Measured effort leads to measured results. Results that do not overwhelm you or disappear overnight. Results that integrate into your life naturally. Results you can maintain without constant strain. He realized that building something that lasts means accepting time as a partner, not an enemy. Time is not something to outrun. It is something to cooperate with. When you cooperate with time, you allow growth to mature. Maturity is the difference between temporary success and lasting impact. Temporary success impresses quickly and fades quickly. Lasting impact grows slowly and remains steady. It does not need to be loud to be meaningful. He also understood that what lasts is usually simple. Simple habits, simple routines, simple decisions repeated consistently. Complexity may look impressive, but simplicity is sustainable. Sustainable systems endure pressure. When pressure comes, and it will, lasting structures hold. You don't crumble under expectation. You don't lose direction under stress. You adjust, but you do not abandon your foundation. That foundation is built from daily consistency, from choosing to continue when no one is watching, from valuing rhythm over rush, from trusting gradual improvement over sudden breakthroughs. Gradual improvement shapes identity slowly, and identity is what keeps you stable in changing environments. As months turned into years, he realized something important. The life he was building did not feel dramatic, but it felt secure. It did not feel flashy, but it felt real. He no longer chased big moments to feel alive. He felt alive in steady movement. That is what it means to build something that lasts. It becomes part of you. You do not have to restart it every time your mood changes. You do not have to defend it every time someone doubts you. You do not have to accelerate it every time you feel behind. You simply continue. And in that continuation, progress compounds, confidence deepens, peace settles, strength stabilizes. What lasts is not built from pressure. It is built from patience. Patience keeps you grounded. Grounded effort builds structure. Structure supports growth. Growth sustained over time becomes undeniable. When you build something that lasts, you stop fearing temporary setbacks. You know that one difficult season cannot erase years of steady work. You understand that stability is stronger than speed. Speed impresses. Stability endures. And endurance creates a life that does not need constant repair. A life that remains steady even when the world around it shifts. A life built not from bursts of motivation, but from the quiet power of consistency. And that is the kind of life worth building. Not because it looks impressive from the outside, but because it feels secure on the inside. A life built on consistency does not constantly shake under pressure. It does not demand reinvention every time something goes wrong. It has depth, and depth creates balance. When you build a life this way, you stop chasing moments and start shaping years. You stop thinking in short bursts and start thinking in long stretches. The urgency that once pushed you begins to soften. You are no longer racing toward an imaginary finish line. You are constructing something that can hold you for the long term. He realized that the greatest reward of steady effort was not success, it was self-respect. Self-respect grows when you keep promises to yourself, when you say you will show up, and you do, when you decide to continue, and you continue. That internal reliability strengthens you quietly. You no longer question whether you are capable. You have evidence. Evidence removes doubt. When doubt reduces, fear loses intensity. You begin to trust your process instead of fearing delay. You no longer compare your pace to others because you are confident in your direction. Direction matters more than speed. A clear direction, followed consistently, leads somewhere meaningful. A fast pace without clarity leads nowhere stable. That understanding changes how you move. You choose carefully, you commit fully, you remain steady. And steadiness builds momentum that does not need excitement to survive. There will still be difficult periods. There will still be days when energy dips or results stall. But when your life is built on consistency, those moments feel temporary, not permanent. You do not interpret every obstacle as failure. You see it as part of the path. That perspective protects your progress. Because progress is fragile only when it is rushed. When it is gradual and grounded, it becomes resilient. Resilience is quiet strength. It allows you to remain composed when plans change. It allows you to adapt without losing yourself. It allows you to pause without quitting. Over time, you start to notice something remarkable. The very habits that once felt small begin to define you. The discipline that once felt forced becomes natural. The routine that once felt repetitive becomes empowering. Repetition shapes identity. Identity shapes destiny. And destiny shaped by consistency is rarely chaotic. It is intentional. It reflects the choices you repeated, not the emotions you chased. This is why building a lasting life requires patience. Patience allows growth to mature fully. It prevents you from abandoning progress prematurely. It teaches you that meaningful outcomes rarely appear overnight. When you accept this, you stop looking for shortcuts. You stop searching for sudden breakthroughs. You understand that the real breakthrough is continuation. Continuation builds character. Character builds stability. Stability builds endurance. And endurance ensures that what you create remains. So when you ask yourself what kind of life you want, think beyond quick wins and temporary recognition. Think about what will still stand years from now. Think about the habits you are willing to repeat. Think about the identity you are shaping through your daily actions. Because the life you repeat becomes the life you live. If you repeat inconsistency, you live in cycles. If you repeat steadiness, you live in growth. And growth sustained over time creates something rare. A life that does not need to restart. A life that does not collapse under pressure. A life that endures quietly, confidently, and completely. And that is not built in a moment. It is built every day you choose to continue.